What's up, everybody? James here, and we have some really cool news today because we're doing some upgrades. That's right. Lots and lots and lots of fun boxes today. We are finally going to be putting on our Fuel Customs intake. And the R5. Now these boxes have been sitting here for way too long. And the reason they haven't been opened and used is we needed this. So we finally have a Vortex, and this Vortex is all set up with everything that we're gonna need as far as a tune goes for this part, that part, and then lastly, we're going with the Stage 3. Now, as I understand it, that should put Darth Maul somewhere north of 60 horsepower or right around it, which, if I'm being completely honest, is probably more than enough for anything you're going to do with this thing. So I'm pretty excited about that. But today's the day for disassembly and reassembly. Oh, and one more thing. Due to the lack of the fire roads being off-highway vehicle use, we decided that we're going to take a little different approach and introduce some turn signals. Oh, that's right. We're going street legal. So, first things first, we're going to get these plastics off. And gas tank's going to have to come off because we have to get to our access ports up here for the valve lash. I mean, come on. You can't put in a new cam and not lash the valves. Some people do this. It happens. We're not going to do that. I don't think Mike Sabo would be very proud of us if we did something like that. It is time for a cleaning of Mr. Air Filter anyway, so perfect timing. So yeah, let's get these plastics removed out of the way and we will get to it. And I'm sure you guys have seen enough of these particular steps before, plenty of other people's channels, so see you on the other side. Couple funny things to note. This thing is literally so new. I literally just realized I haven't even peeled off the heads-up display protection film. So there we go. You guys get to do the peel with me. The other thing I commonly hear and get made fun of a lot is I still have my tag on my key. And yeah, well, I like that. Flaps in the wind and reminds me how much this thing cost. Alright, so fuel tank removal. A couple things to take note. This guy isn't straightforward when you look at it, how to take it off. You have to actually lift these little tabs on the bottom and the top and slide it back after you've released them. And then it just comes right off. So that's one thing. The other thing is the front mounts for the fuel tank. Underneath the tank, hidden from view, and once you remove the bolts, you have no idea that they're there, are these guys. And they will fall off, go somewhere between where they were and the ground. Believe me, they will not make it all the way there, and you'll have to find them. So try to avoid that. Discovery number 2, it looks like our throttle cable, while still functional, has sheared. Look at the inside there. It has actually sheared the little threaded piece that's normally here. It is gone. No idea how that happened, but I suspect it was when I was trying to adjust the length of this for the install of the Rossier throttle. So, gonna have to get a new one of those, because that's simply not gonna do. Add that to the list. Another interesting fact as we go along here, the factory airbox has the factory Yamaha ECU mounted to the side of it. I did not know that. In fact, a lot of things are kind of tight and compact in here. It's pretty slick how they've got it engineered. But yeah, if you look, the little mount and bracket and everything, it's pretty slick. The other thing I noticed is the stock intake has a kind of a Venturi shaped conical screen facing the opposite direction you would think it would face. So that's interesting as well. It's always a reason things are engineered the way they're engineered. But as you can tell, the parts list is growing that have to be removed to get to what we have to get to. But that's good. We're going to clean everything up in the process, make it all look brand new. 25 hours, almost. Perfect timing. Now as disassembly continues, we've got the stock exhaust removed here. And one of the things I'm actually shocked about with the stock exhaust is how much it weighs. This sucker is not light. The can itself is, I mean, I would say that's 25 pounds, maybe? At least 20. I mean, that's significant when you're talking about something that only weighs 420 something wet stock. So, you know, this is that 20 something. Obviously the R5 is it's no lightweight, it's no slouch, but man, this is so much lighter. Not even close. I mean, not even close. So remember guys, you're not just talking about sound, you're not talking about performance, but you're also talking about weight. On a 400 plus minus machine, you know, 15-20 pounds is a lot. You know, that's why they say rider weight so important, stuff like that. Get yourself in shape. It matters. It matters, it really does. So I'm pretty excited about the collective difference all this is going to make. I mean, the Fuel Customs stuff is made of composite material. I mean, this is similar to the, oh, I'll put it over there, but the stock airbox. Not looking to see too big of a difference there, but definitely going to see a difference on that. Well, we got disassembly pretty much done here. All the stock parts removed. And at this point, we will start cleaning up some things that are very hard to get to when the plastics and stuff are on. Make sure everything's nice and polished up. We're also going to be removing the stock headlights, but we can always do that later. I think this might be a diagnostic port as part of the stock wiring harness. Not really sure, but saw that and it did not have a home when I was disassembling, so yeah, not too bad. Basically you need an Allen, a 10 millimeter, a 12 millimeter for like 2 bolts, and that's it. Oh, and a tiny flathead or a tiny Phillips for the little plastic pop rivet things for the plastics, and that's it. So much more to come as we start putting everything back together. And again, we're doing a big 3. We're doing the R5, the Fuel Customs intake, and a Vortex with a custom tune from Jay at Illinois Powersports. So not fooling around with any piggybacks. We're going straight to the Vortex, straight to a custom tune. It's already been set up He actually had another 2022 Raptor 700 in-house with the same setup. And I keep forgetting to mention the Stage 3 hot cam. Stage 3 hot cam. So he got to dyno that exact setup, and that is what we'll be using. So I am looking forward very much to how this thing's going to perform. Well, well, well. We're back for another day of fun in the garage, and we've been slightly delayed on moving forward here from the disassembly because, well, it is summer here in Georgia. And if you wait until 10 or 11 o'clock, it's already in the 90s. And you can't breathe, move, think, or even handle tools for all the sweat. And don't even try to wear work gloves. That's funny. So we're gonna give it another go this morning. Probably try to get the R5 installed. That's gonna be pretty straightforward and simple. We already had it on once to test fit everything. And run it just to see how it sounded. But of course, with the stock tune, that didn't last very long. Started to get a little bit hot from all the leanness. So we'll probably put that on. We might actually try to pull the cam out, or at the very least, start that process. That's definitely the part I'm looking forward to the least, just because there are a lot of different pieces that have to come out, and well, a lot of room for error. I like to think I know a little bit about what I'm doing here, but I am by myself and I don't have another pair of eyes to tell me, hey, you didn't put that bolt on and you forgot the Loctite. Stuff like that. All right, so let's get to it. All right, well, we are making some progress here. We've got our eye mark. You can see it there, lined up. And we've got our top timing mark lined up as well. This little peak right here with that little line. We've got our tensioner removed, and yeah, we're ready to go on pulling this guy out. So making some good progress here. Didn't actually end up needing to use this. I used Daniel Cuervo's trick of putting it in gear, taking out the spark plug, and just using the chain on the tires to roll it. It's a whole lot easier than using a wrench. Plus, I can't seem to find my 1/4 to 1/2 inch adapter. So anyway, let's get this done. All right. Well, that was fun. There's quite a bit of motivation needed to get that cam to come loose from where it was in the bearing race back there, but we got it in the end. A couple things to be aware of. These two will need some Loctite. You can see where they had some in there from Yamaha, so we'll want to put that back. My little safety mechanism for the timing chain. Hopefully I don't need to rely on that. We are still at TDC on the eye mark. And here is the stock parts pile. A lot of little components, including the decomp pin inside of here, as well as this piece as part of that. So we're going to take those out and reuse them over here. The cam is now back installed. Our cam stage 3, we are all lined up, timing marks here. We are sitting on our eye mark here. And we've moved on to valve lash. Valve lash. So we've already done the intake, setting it at 4 thousandths on both rockers. Got those torqued down to spec. And now we've moved on to the much more difficult to access exhaust side, which we're going to set at 6 thousandths. As per Mr. Daniel Cuervo, whose guidance we have been following so far on this whole install. So And shout out to Mr. Cuervo. His instructions were spot on, and all his little gotchas were very helpful. So be linking him below for sure. Check it out if you want a detailed hot cam stage 3 install video. So that's it. We are all buttoned up on the cam install. The exhaust side actually was perfect out of the box. Intake side needed quite a bit of adjustment, but no fancy cam cover for me. We are not sponsored, and those are very, very expensive. As much as I would love to have one. If anybody has any generosity in mind there, feel free to hit me up. Would love to put one on here and give it a solid review as part of this project. But yeah, I think that's it for the cam and the valve adjustment, which was the reason we had to take most of this thing apart. And now we're going to work backwards and start getting the Fuel Customs intake installed, get the air injection system and all of its associated piping and tubing and stuff removed. Not going to need that anymore. And then we will put on the R5, which again is probably the simplest and easiest of all the remaining tasks. Oh, and the Vortex. Let's not forget about the Vortex. Well, probably the last little bit I'll be able to get done for now, but one of the last steps on putting together the box for the Fuel Customs intake is we got to swap over what used to be, here on the stock one, the mount for the stock Yamaha ECU. It's on the side of the airbox. As we mentioned before, wow, that's pretty hot. So we've transferred the main part of the bracket over here to the new airbox with these two rubber grommets there. And those two grommets are received by these plugs right here, these studs. And then the Yamaha ECU bolts right up, Mitsubishi logo, that's kind of funny, to these bolt patterns. Obviously, if you look at the Vortex, it's about 2/3 the size and does not have any bolts. But they do provide you with this sleeve, which will anchor to this, which will anchor to where those studs used to go. So, yeah, put all that back together, and essentially you're going to have this holding this on, with these just being useless. Because I don't think they hold anything other than that, which will not be there anymore. So, unless we want to just put it back on, that'll be that. And then that will go in. The pipe will go behind it. We'll get the filter and the filter sleeve and all that put on. And we'll start working on the AIS, but I think that's going to have to be in Chapter 3. Well, we're back for Chapter 3 in this adventure, and we are working on getting the inlet air temperature sensor put into the new Fuel Customs intake tube. It's kind of cool how this works. So they supply you with this little bracket right here, and I've already got it bent slightly so that it will accommodate this. And it just holds this in. There's a rubber O-ring there. Keeps it nice and tight so that no air can get sucked in around this instead of coming through the air filter. So that works out pretty well. Pretty pleased with how that came out. You can see the IAT sensor sticking out right there inside. So this will go basically, and the best way to do this, if you're doing it by yourself, upside down, and then turn it around once it's in, and then you can thread it into the throttle body. So we're going to work on that next, get all of our vacuum lines and purge, crankcase purge lines run. We're going to be running one from the high-speed idle control valve back to the intake tube, and then everything you see here for the AIS is going to get blocked off, and then we'll be running another one for the other port on the intake tube. So all this is going to go away, a lot of this is going to go away, going to get cleaned up quite a bit. So we'll get started on that. So the AIS delete plate from Nice CNC is on. We put some red Loctite on these because they definitely had some from the factory. Pretty simple. You just keep everything that's behind this when you take the stock one off in there and put this right back on top. And the mechanism that's in there is kind of a rubber diaphragm material, and it's also kind of the gasket surface. So there's no gasket there. Let's pop that on. And here is the plug that used to go to the AIS actuator right here. And typically when you're running Power Commander piggybacks, you're still using the stock Yamaha ECU, you leave this mounted up there, take this hose off so that that electrical plug is still terminated to something. I believe with the stock ECU, you will throw a DTC, diagnostic trouble code, without that there. I think especially if it tries to go and activate it while you're riding, and it can't, it gets no resistance, no response. I'm pretty sure it will, but with the Vortex, I don't think that's going to be a problem. And if so, we'll just put a terminator, a loop back terminator right there, so that the current still flows through. It won't have any resistance, but maybe that'll solve it. I don't really want to put that module back up there because it does weigh like half a pound, and it's just something to rattle around and potentially fall off when we start doing some aggressive riding. So yeah, that's the situation there, and that completely eliminated having to deal with the hose that came off of there on this side. So that's one less hose to tie off. So now we just move on to the next two. All right, we've got all of our vacuum hoses run the way we want. What we ended up doing was we actually ran, let's get this up off the starter here and put it back in its little support hook. There we go. That up off the starter. Now, this is your positive crankcase vent, or PCV. And I've got that running up through its little holder there. And then it's going to be kind of tough to see, but yeah, I think you can see it. There's a splitter right there that came from Fuel Customs. And this splitter is taking the positive crankcase vent on the bottom, and it's taking the high-speed idle valve from the throttle body on the top. And then I've got it going right in to the bottom port on the intake. I'm going to cap this off. We're not going to use it. I left the top one open so that in the future, if we want to put something else that's vacuum operated on here, or I don't know, measure vacuum at some point or anything like that, this is a lot easier to get to than that. Also, it's just nice and tucked away. It's not touching or rubbing anything. We get to use the factory mount. I'm pretty excited about it. Minimal hose, minimal weight, minimal things to break. So yeah, so that's done. We got all this locked up tight. Pretty much almost done here. Can't really secure these down until we get the front plastics on and get everything aligned. So yeah, let's keep trucking. We're making some good progress here. Hopefully we can wrap this up. Man, it is hot out here. Okay, so there's a couple of things that are really important to note here. Note number one. So your air inlet temperature sensor. The cord or cable wires that connect to it, they come from a bundle here. As you can see there, they're duct taped together and then a little bit of a wire harness clip that's tied to a whole bunch of other stuff. So you're not going to be taking that out unless you break apart that whole part of the wire harness. Lose a lot of the protection and a lot of the, protection that you're getting from all the tape and all the bracketry that holds things away from rough edges and hot parts. So I didn't want to do that. So what I did is I took the clip here that used to hold the crankcase vent off of the starter, and we don't really need that anymore because the way that we ran the crankcase lines, this is never going to be able to droop any more than that anyway, because it's held up by where it's mounted. So feel good about that. Don't really need that. So what I did is I lifted that up and wedged it on top of that relay box And that holds it so the tension is not on this, because before this was being pulled completely tight and everything was trying to go down, and it was pulling on these wires in a just unacceptable amount like that. You can't leave that like that. So this is much better, but definitely take note of that. You're going to want to navigate that carefully. The other point is this. So the way Fuel Customs intends you to do this, they actually have a hole right here on the air box that you see I just plugged. That hole is supposed to accept one of the 90-degree fittings that they give you, and you're supposed to run your crankcase vent straight back to that hole so that if your crankcase were to vent any oil, it would go into the bottom of your box. That may be something I end up doing in the future, but right now I kind of want to know through exhaust smoke if I'm getting a lot of blow-by, because that's not good and a sign of problems. So I would want to know that versus just filling up the bottom of my airbox with blown-by oil and not really knowing anything about it until I open it up and look. So yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. But don't forget, if you're not going to use this hole, that you've got to put that plug in there. Otherwise, you want to talk about a great place for water entry. I mean, you might as well not have a box at that point. So we're looking good. We're all buttoned up, tightened up. Everything is secure. We've covered this 90, so we're not making an artificial air leak there. And I think it's time to put that R5 on. Finally. So we've moved on to the R5, got that put on. It's quite straightforward. Not a lot of drama at all. Word to the wise. Wear some gloves when you're handling this. The reason is, right up here in this area where you're going to see it a lot, you're going to be looking at it a lot, and it's going to get the hottest, that's where you're going to put your hand when you're installing it. You're going to grab it right here, you're going to manipulate it, all the oil and sweat and stuff from your hand is going to get all over the pipe. And then when you do that first heat cycle, it will discolor unevenly. And if you look on YouTube or Instagram at some of the guys running these, in some cases you can actually see hand prints with the thumb and then the fingers coming around of the discoloration. And you get it hot enough and it's going to equalize out eventually, but it's super easy to avoid. Just wear a pair of gloves. Helps you keep a better grip on it anyway, because it can be a little slick. And that's it. Other thing to note about the R5, a lot of people have asked this question that have installed it. You don't seal this joint. This is a flush mount sleeve type joint, and the likelihood of the exhaust backing back up that much of overlap and coming out of that seam, it's just not going to happen. It's going to follow the path of least resistance and come right out of the can. So yeah, got this thing put on. We put our spark plug back in, got our wire back attached. We had removed that both to check it, but also to, when we were doing the cam install, it's a lot easier to turn this thing over to top dead center and not have it want to go one way or the other from top dead center if you take all the compression away by removing the plug. So little helpful tip there. The R5 really only bolts up with the 2 bolts on the head and then the 1 bolt here. So not a lot going on as far as mount points, but this sucker is solid. These are pretty big 11 mil bolts. They go in pretty far. As you can see here, it's got a big piece of meat to hang on to there. They designed it that way. I do wish that the R5 mounted to both brackets, but as you can see, there's really no way for them to do that without having some janky looking weird bracketry, because this pipe just isn't nearly the same size as the stock one. It's a lot smaller, a lot lighter. So good stuff there. Next, we need to start thinking about getting our fuel tank put back on. So we've already put this tray back in here. It kind of fits in here awkwardly around your steering stem. There is a little wire loop right here that you want to thread all your cables and wires and hoses back through. See if there's anything else to note. Oh, your gas tank rests on these kind of rubber cushiony mounts. This one is actually part of this base. This one stays behind, but make sure you've got both of those in there and they're both positioned correctly to take the weight of the gas tank. You don't want anything banging, knocking, moving, vibrating. Not looking for that. And I think that we are just about to the point we want to be at with putting the fuel tank back on. So that is next. And you can't really do a test of anything. So obviously you have the fuel tank, gotta have fuel. But also, and this is kind of an irritating fact about the Raptor's design, this particular plug right here goes to the heads-up display, which is right here. And the unfortunate part about that is, I don't think you can actually get this thing to crank. Maybe with the Vortex you can, but I don't think you can get it to crank without that plugged in. We're going to find out shortly. It might just be that it needs the fuel pump relay to be active and hot for it to be happy, but we'll experiment with that shortly. It would just seem a little bit frustrating if you actually had to put the plastics back on to test it, when you're just going to have to take them back off again if there's a problem. So let's find out. Well, I think we're ready. So we got the gas tank back on. One of the things to be really careful of are the risers I mentioned earlier when I removed it. You want to talk about fun. Getting those back up underneath there and then pushing the bolt through without having any help. Try to get some help. I'll just say that. But managed to do it with my finger and my thumb combination there. Got those in there. We got everything plugged back up. Fuel line reattached. Fuel pump relay reattached. I think it's time. Let's see what happens. Well, I think that concludes the ability to ride it in the neighborhood, because I don't think that's gonna fly. And I'm fine with that. Man, oh man, oh man, what a beautiful sound that was. Well, we did a little test ride. Did not get to film that because it is just too hot to put my helmet on and wear my camera rig. So hats or helmets off to anybody who could right now, but that is not me. It is a heat index of over 100 right now. Everything checks out, no leaks, no problems. The only thing that I am the slightest bit concerned about is the excessive valve train noise. I mean, I guess this cam is just gonna be louder on the stock springs, and I mean just in general, but definitely louder. And you know, I'm kind of used to that in aftermarket world with higher lift cams and stuff, but I don't know, maybe it just needs to be broken a little bit and the lash needs to be checked again after it's been heat cycled a few times. We'll see, but not exactly easy to get to the valve lash because you got to remove the fuel tank to easily get to that one. But that said, I personally set the intakes to where they needed to be. The exhausts were already within spec, so I think if anything we may need to adjust that. Should be able to get to that. But I'm not going to adjust anything right now. I'm going to check with others who've done this and see what their thoughts are. But I think that pretty much wraps it up. Big 3 plus a stage 3. I think that's what we'll call this one. Big 3 plus stage 3 for Darth Maul. But anyway, we'll see you guys in the next one where we continue with the street legal conversion.